Why
you
don't you
know,
tell them about big man gear? We can get into the next story.
God, you're an idiot. But anyway,
Well, it goes both ways.
so true. Big Man Gear. Big Man Gear, that's me. Big Man Gear is the big man's idea of a funny merch brand. It's every corny dad joke and Generation X meme, not boomer meme, on t-shirts for sale on Amazon Prime so that it will get to you in your 2 days, that kind of crap. Currently, you can buy the unapproved Idiots vs. Idiots logo tee that Danny absolutely hates at bigmangear.com because who doesn't need another t-shirt that tells everyone how you feel about your personal news source?
You read the whole thing.
I
So
did
happy
read
for
the
you.
whole thing, you know. So Danny takes all the time to write these dumb things. So I thought, you know what?
For once in my
Let's give
life.
it to him, like he
Right.
wants it.
This next story I find to be superbly interesting.
Hmm.
Redfin is acquiring Rentpath, I believe, out of bankruptcy.
They are
600.
attempting. They are attempting.
Are they?
Let's back that up because
Okay.
Rentpath is in bankruptcy. And so to acquire it, they've already tried to been acquired once, and antitrust laws came in and said no, no. They tried to merge with a company called CoStar Group, which is
Yeah,
the
that's a
other
commercial
big
real estate. Yeah.
the other big rental property apartment finding type of, and antitrust laws came in and said no, 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 because these are your two biggest players in your apartment finder, your rental finders. These are the two biggest players. Now, again, you're talking about a guy that owns parts of several real estate companies, but I'm in this industry, and this is actually from a federal government, and Danny's not going to like this, from a federal government antitrust aspect. They're really getting concerned about, because when you are looking for a home to rent or to buy, how many sources out there, especially accurate sources, are people finding? Are people going to, right? People are going to Zillow. Well, they've had, I don't know, a dozen different antitrust lawsuits filed against them because of inaccurate information. Does that
Yeah.
stop anybody from going? Is there any money being spent out there saying, hey, Zillow's giving you bad information, don't go there?
Right.
No, nobody's spending any money telling you that, right?
Of course,
But
yeah.
so in this case, you have a company that was already tried to merge because they are in, because you're talking about a company that has
But
$688 million in long-term debt that last year only made 194.
right. And you're talking about Rentpath.
Right, I'm talking about Rentpath, but then you're
So
talking about Redfin trying to acquire it. The
right.
same thought process comes in, right?
So
Redfin is a big company.
the reason I personally, of course, again, don't see a major conflict is because Redfin is traditionally viewed as a means of purchasing.
Correct.
The vast majority, I would have to guess, 90+% of people hopping on Redfin or using a Redfin agent are buying a home. They're not renting.
Mm-hmm.
So Rent Path gives them it's an entirely different market. Whereas CoStar is the data provider for a bunch of different, like apartments.com and all these other
Right, a
places.
bunch of your big names.
So I can understand the overstep of the federal government, which shouldn't even exist, but they of getting into the craw of CoStar and saying you
Mm-hmm.
can't do this, as compared to Redfin being perhaps a better partner. And I'm looking at a couple other places. You're right; it's still a pending deal, but it doesn't look like there's any news about it being, you know,
Well, these things
hit,
take time. I
hiccuped
don't
by
know what
regulators.
Redfin. Look, I was about to say I don't know what Redfin really gets out of this, but what they get out of this. Look, they are. You can go to Redfin and you can look for apartments and you can look for rentals. You can already do that through their website. You can do it through
Right.
mine. You can do it through anybody's. What are they actually buying here? And we've talked about this a billion times. They're buying an audience. They're buying a database from the largest database collector of people that want to rent apartments, homes, whatever, right? Redfin being a discount brokerage, right? That, on the sales side
Right.
of real estate, being a discount brokerage, they want that data. They want to turn around and market to all these people,
To
not
buy a
only
house.
about to buy a house, but all these renters that have been renting to buy a house, right? And they want to increase their database, and I'm sure it's probably by like 10 or 15 fold, if they are able to acquire. They have no desire. Now, they'll have to take on some of this debt, but if they're in Chapter 11, they'll probably
Right.
be able to restructure some of it, right?
Right.
And then only take on probably half of it, which they would be
Right.
glad to do for the database itself.
Right. So I'm, this is a curiosity of mine. So, due to the events of 2020 and Dos Equis, the government put a halt on foreclosures, and they put a
Right?
halt until the summer of this year on evictions.
Yes.
So, depending on what happens, and that's not, I mean, this we can only speculate. There's no concept of knowing what will happen. But my guess is going to be, if you don't have $1,200 in May of last year to pay your rent, you're not going to have the $13,000 in back rent you've accrued in the last year.
We've already, as of, I think it was December 2020, we
Yeah.
have surpassed the number of, now I'm going to be careful about this, the number of people that are behind on their mortgage, right? We have already passed the percentage of people that are at least 1 month behind on their mortgage that caused the 2008 housing crisis.
Right.
We've already surpassed that. Now the question becomes, and I say I'm going to be careful about that, is because they're more than a month behind with the current moratoriums, right, and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that
They're in
someone
foreclosure.
doesn't figure out how to fix it between now and the time that ends. Whether it's through mortgage modifications, whether it's through
Yes.
forgiveness, whether it's through whatever that may come up, whether government or lending between now and then. But that number scares people when you go, there are more, one in almost every four people in America
behind,
are at least a month behind on their mortgage.
So,
that's a lot.
So, and I wonder if a lot of those corporations, a lot of these big companies that own apartment complexes, given the leeway from the government, because rental, the other thing, I don't think a lot of people outside of the real estate industry understand is rent, even if you live in one of the, most of the cities in the United States are non-rent control, there's still a cavalcade, a mass of regulations that got the guidelines that determine how you rent apartments and homes.
100%.
And a lot of times it's like they legally cannot give you a break, right? If you're unless it's like you have a informal agreement, handshake deal with your buddy who's like, yeah, you can just rent my house while I'm whatever, which I've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a formal lease agreement, they can't cut you a break. There are legal prevention, the things that legally prevent them from cutting you a break. Sometimes they are legally required to take you to
right,
because they don't want it to appear as though a landlord is showing preferential treatment to one kind of person, saying, okay, I know you're behind, but then evicting someone else. So what I'm interested to know is Redfin going, hey, a bajillion people are going to foreclose. If we end up owning Rentpath, people are going to need to rent apartments and homes. But I also think mortgage lenders, landlords are going to go, listen, we don't figure out some sort of agreement with these people. The other side of it is we have vacancy.
yeah,
and that vacancy is just going to be harder and harder to fill because people are not going to meet the credit requirement.
It becomes, look, this is the question. Here's what several, and it's not just Redfin, what you said is very astute. There are several people in the real estate.
Genius.
I won't go that far. There's several people in the real estate industries and the supporting industries that are banking on what you just said, that there will be a lot of people that do get foreclosed on for whatever reason that they may or may not offer. It's not going to cover 100% of everybody, but they're banking on the fact that there will be a lot more renters coming out of this. Right? And not only that, but the opposite is true as well. There are people, conversation I had earlier today, that are banking on the short-term rental market going up so much that they're buying up homes in certain places like Orlando, Florida, where Disneyland, you know what I mean, or whatever. So it seems to be opposite sides of the spectrum are counting on it to get a lot worse for this side and a lot better for this side. Does that make sense?
BlackRock just acquired a company that will buy your house from you and let you rent it, and they'll rent it back to you. because they are
That's been
under the.
around for a while.
I know, but here's the thing: it's been around for a while, sure. The fact that BlackRock, one of the world's largest hedge funds, bought into the industry shows me that they're at least betting on a thesis that it was there was some positives to the crash of 2008 and 2009. There wasn't enough alternatives to the people who are like, hey, I'm going to get back on my feet or what have you.
Sure, but it's short term for them. If look, I'll tell you, anybody in Central Texas right now that's willing to sign their house over to me and let me rent it back for them for what they're paying, I'd do it all day, every day. Because here's why: look, any big company, what they're betting is long term. That's the difference between the average person and big companies. Is I can afford to lose money for the next 2 years, knowing that I'm going to multiply it by 10 the next 5 after that, right? 2008, 2009 crash, the people that were able to hold on to their homes for the next 7 years until 2014, 2015 made their money back in droves, just cashola. It's the people that had to sell during the down market or had to do something that lost their job during the housing crunch or whatever. Those are the people that suffered, right? It wasn't the other way around. So like BlackRock, they're just seeing it as an opportunity. They can tie their money up for the next 2 years and take equity away from people that they know 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, they're going to double it. You know what I mean? They'll all get all their money back plus more than if they would have stuck their money in a bank, right? So it's opportunistic. And again, I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying people have to go into situations with their eyes wide open.
So I'm looking at it like this. Are they taking away people's equity? If you're going to foreclose on your house, right? Because that's what you said was like they're taking away people's equity. But listen, you're on the brink of foreclosing on your home because you can't make the payments. It is way smarter for you to find a company that's going to prevent that event from happening where you don't have to move.
Correct.
And it's always a bummer to move when you don't want to. You know? You're moving.
Nobody ever wants to move.
Yeah, I mean, but it's one thing if you're like moving into my dream home, moving to a new city where I got a new opportunity, whatever. It's different when I'm leaving because I can't afford to be in the place that I love to live. So I think that I do think that it's interesting, and I like that conversation about the future real estate market in the context of the events of 2020. I think is really interesting, and it's even more fascinating to know that people are betting on both sides of it, like both sides of the concept. Like they both either thing might happen.
And when I say both, I'm playing both sides myself. Again, being in the industry, I'm playing both sides myself. Look, it's a good bet. It's a bet, but it's a good bet. Even if and I think again the government with it federally backed lending, right? Yeah. People that have FHA loans and whatever federally backed lending, they're going to come out with some plan that accommodates a large amount of people, but it's not going to be everybody. It's just not.
So here's what I do know. I do know some people who have been behind on their mortgage, aside from post 2008 and aside from Dos Equis. And I know that the bank bent over backwards in a way they would not have done 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
To accommodate them and say, can we just figure, because they know the cost of picking them out, and then you don't know what somebody's going to do when they're getting kicked out of their house. You don't know if they're going to leave all the water on. You don't know if they're going to take the copper out of the walls, out of the copper piping out of the walls. You don't know what kind of nonsense people are going to get up to closing, and they're angry. Mm-hmm. They know that it's just cheaper, quicker, easier to say. And, we exist in a time where there is volumes of liquidity coming from the Federal Reserve to continue to backstop these, what I would call bad mortgages. But
yeah.
That's just my assessment as a genius, but
it will come out the other side with more renters, at least in the short term. And people with money, as always, opportunistic. People with money are going to make more money. We've talked about it on this show. There will be opportunities in multiple ways coming out the other end of this to make a lot of money, probably more so than in any other time in my life. And I lived through 3 depressions now, a gas
economic
crisis,
downturns. Yeah.
right? And stuff like that. So, but
Right.
this will probably be the last one in my lifetime. The opportunity that is there currently, not
Right.
just in real estate, but in multiple different facets.
And
And we'll continue to talk about those here on the show.
yeah, and let me just say this much as my kind of parting thesis here. I am not, I don't, I love the real estate industry. I'm actually working on getting a license at the moment. Um, and none of the events have deterred me from doing that because a lot of people might have been like, yeah, it's all coming down. But my view is that there are a lot of people who own homes that are burdened by them and not blessed by them.
Correct.
And I think those people, if those people are the people who don't keep their homes or they end up becoming renters, their attitude is if they have an optimistic attitude about it, I think they're going to come out on the other side of it so much better off because they didn't understand how their home was weighing them down by for a lot of different reasons, which is you want to move to a different state for a better opportunity. You want to go somewhere where it's warm. Listen. I think these people are nuts. But I'm working I'm working in that industry. People who want to go live in a van. Okay,
Right.
I think you're nuts. I ain't
Yeah.
living in a van. Okay,
No.
my grandfather left a third world country so I could live in a lap of luxury. All right.
Yeah, no, these tiny houses and these
Yeah,
buying a
not
bus
doing it.
and living in a bus or living in
You're
a
whack.
van or what,
You're an
like
insane
you're
person.
crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah.
And again, if it's you, do you.
God bless. I'm saying God
Absolutely.
bless. Go with God. I don't think you're a bad person. I just think out of you're whacked. There's something wrong with your brain.
Agreed.
But there are so many people engaging in hashtag van life that there is an entire cottage industry to build those vans now. So, and we may or may not have something coming that is adjacent to that industry. But nonetheless, what I'm trying to drive at here is it's going to free you. Like this house, because the mentality that your home is an asset, that's a lie. Not saying you
True.
shouldn't buy it, right? But when people say I invested this much money to buy a car, I'm like, you're a moron. You didn't invest money to buy a car, you threw the money away. That's the point of money. Sometimes you just throw some of it away because you enjoy what you bought with it. And I know people, my dad's one of these guys, like, his house probably hasn't been the greatest investment for him. He could have probably put his money in other places and rented and got a better return. But he enjoyed the crap out of his house. He enjoyed living in it and he enjoyed it. So he got the return in a different way. But for a lot of people, that house, because they bought into the go to college, get a degree, get a job, buy a house, and they didn't realize that it was holding them back from more happiness because they never bothered to ask themselves, what makes me happy? And sometimes you have to find the bottom of your bottom of the bottom of your barrel, or you go, what do I actually freaking care about? Right. And I've been blessed enough to have 1,000 of those opportunities in my life where it helps me adjust. And I go, listen, I enjoy buying watches that I probably shouldn't own, but I enjoy them. So I'm going to buy them. Right. But it's because, and I go, listen, I don't care that much about buying sneakers or jeans or fancy clothes. So I'm buying black t-shirts because that's what I like wearing and cowboy boots. And that's just what I wear all the time now instead of suits. And dude, trying to buy a suit for a guy my size is
No, it's called
obnoxious.
custom made, brother. It's
Yeah,
called
that's
custom
what I'm
made.
saying.
That's how you make them. But
And I
look,
used to wear a
everything
lot
you
of
said,
suits.
everything you said is like very Danny-esque in his
Okay.
quote unquote intelligent genius way
Yeah.
is partially true. And what I mean partially true is partially true for a minority. You're talking about a very small percentage of how it works. The fact is, yes, a home, I could argue, easily is not an asset, but it is an investment. And if it's done intelligently from start to bottom, and people take the investment part of it as part of the equation when they're purchasing. What I see more often than not in the people that you're describing, that minority that you're describing, is they make bad decisions from the get-go. They bought the wrong house in the wrong neighborhood in the wrong
At
place
the wrong time,
in the wrong
for the
time
wrong amount
in
of
the wrong
money. Yeah.
and they didn't seek out professional advice, or if they did, they got attached to the wrong people that helped them in those decisions, which we can all listen to bad advice from time to time, right? And whatever. But a lot of us get into those situations situations because they don't seek out professional advice. They don't seek out people that tell them you're doing a bad thing at a bad time, right? Or whatever. So the majority of people, when they invest properly in homes, it is a great investment, and they do see that return on investment over the years and that kind of stuff. It again, a home is not an asset.
Right.
Okay, it's just not. It doesn't fit the definition of an asset, but it is an investment, and if done properly, it is still the number one way to get wealthy in America. By statistic probability, it is still the number one way. Most millionaires, statistically, have gained their wealth through real estate more than any other industry. Okay, now, that being said, there's a difference between buying a house and investing in real estate. There is a difference, right? But anyway, look, again, I'm going to go back to this Redfin, and the whole point of Redfin and Rentpath is Redfin is trying to buy a database from a company that's going through foreclosure. They want that database, as you said, to leverage it coming out the other side of Dos Equis and trying to get on board with it, right? So that they can then market to that database and pick up on that trend. They're just trying to buy up market share. Whether it gets through antitrust, I do agree that it's not the same as when they were trying to merge with CoStar Group, but it is still similar.
Right.
So I'd be interested to see.
It's pronounced similar. I'm kidding.
Similar.